Hello everyone, welcome back. Patrick here. Well, who's excited about Ethereum going back to 2000 and reaching its all-time highs once again? I think it's undeniable we're back on an uptrend right now, and you guys know I bought some coins recently at $1,500. I'm not an expert on crypto by any means, but what I do see is that right now we have a lot of changes that are going to lower the supply but increase the demand, and that is a recipe for making money in any type of investment. Like, the teeter-totter is actually shifting in our favor. So recently I bought coins at about $1,500. Right now it's going up, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So today I want us to talk about what are some of the changes and why it's leading to the price skyrocketing over the next few months. Let's get started, but of course, please like and subscribe. You guys know it really helps out. Alright friends, so let's start with the chart. As usual, it helps us visualize what's going on and recognize the trends if there are any. Well, in Ethereum, it's pretty obvious that since December, there was a massive uptrend, right? It started between 500 and 600, and then it had a massive bull run where it brought the price to above $2,000 in the middle of February. So crypto boom for sure. Lots of new people getting into it, including myself. I mean, to be honest, I always had a lot of doubts about crypto, but you know, when you see prices like these, you're wondering, well, what's going on? Start doing research, and then you figure out if you like it or not. Well, then, of course, the trend was broken when there was a big pullback. There was a lot of uncertainty about it. And this is where, like, you read what people say, the supposedly gurus, and people are telling you, hey, it's going back to 1,000 to 1,300. And it did reach 1,300 very briefly. But since then, look at how it's recovering extremely quickly, and now we're back on an uptrend. Well, there are a lot of good reasons for that, and that's what I want us to look into. Like, there are some structural changes to Ethereum that is going to really increase the share price, in my opinion. As an investor, that's where you want to be. You want the deck to be stacked in your favor, and I think it's the case here. Please admire my paint skills. As you guys can see, I'm not very talented, but since it's a very serious channel, I had to do my best to illustrate what we're talking about today. So crypto, as with almost every other investment, is based on the laws of supply and demand. This is fairly easy to understand, right? When there's more supply than demand, it tends to push the price down. But it's the opposite. When there's less supply than demand, the price tends to go up because there are more people fighting for less resources, so they have to bid each other up, right? So this is extremely important to understand with cryptocurrency, even though it seems basic. But if you understand this, you're going to see why Ethereum is going to keep going up right now. So if we look at both Bitcoin and Ethereum, well, the demand is increasing. I'm going to talk about it a little bit further in the video, but if you think of Elon doing his tweet, talking about the company buying 1.5 billion in Bitcoin, well, there were a lot of people that wanted to get into Bitcoin, so that increases the demand, and it kind of tilts the teeter-totter in favor of demand. The supply is what really going to affect the price. So with Bitcoin, the supply is fairly limited, right? We already know that it's capped at 21 million coins, and the supply doesn't change, right? There's no acceleration in the supply. In fact, right now it's mined, but over time with the halvings, and sorry, I can't really pronounce that correctly, but with the halvings, the supply is actually going to drop over time. So that's why the teeter-totter is going to keep going more and more towards the demand, and the price, the value is going to go up. So with Ethereum right now, there are structural changes that are also having the same effect. The supply is actually going to drop, and the demand is going to go up. So instead of being like this, it's going to tilt more and more in favor of demand and increase the share price. And that's why when you look at the chart, as we saw earlier, there's such a massive uptick, right, over the past year. So now let's get into how this is created. Like, what are some of the changes right now that are creating this big change in the supply and demand? The biggest factor affecting the value of Ethereum, why it's going up right now and why it's going to keep going up over the next few months, is that they just adopted EIP 1559, which should be implemented in July. So I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but you are going to keep hearing about it if you're into crypto at all. So EIP 1559 is a structural change that the developers are trying to implement that is going to affect the supply. So that's not exactly what they intended to do. What they really wanted to work on is the transaction fees, which are too high for Ethereum, so it lowers the adoption, right? And people complain that it's too expensive to do transactions with it. Well, by implementing EIP 1559, one of the things that they added to it is kind of going to lower the supply of Ethereum. So when you lower the supply, and naturally, gradually over time, there are more and more people using it, so the demand increases, as we talked about earlier, it kind of tends to tilt it towards the price going up. Now, sadly, I have to go back to Paint to explain this. This is super interesting to me, but of course, it's a little bit more complicated. So if you guys have questions, just write them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. So what the devs are trying to do with EIP 1559 is to keep the transaction costs under control, right? And one of the components that they're adding is fee burning. This has been like very debated in the industry. There are miners that are very frustrated with this because it's going to lower their profitability. But on the other end, the end users, like the investors, most people that hold the coins or do transactions, are kind of hoping that this is going to keep the cost down and make it more accessible for most users. And we'll be able to develop more applications where you're not going to be paying like $70 to do one transaction. So right now, what that's going to do is that the developers are going to implement a base fee for the transactions. And then as the network gets more and more congested, the fee is going to gradually increase. So the more the fee goes up, the less people will want to pay it. That's going to lower the demand. That's going to lower the fee. And then the goal is to reach equilibrium between the number of transactions that the current network can sustain versus the number of transactions that people actually are trying to accomplish at the time, right? So it's trying to reach that balance between the two. So people that have really important transactions that want to be ahead of the line, let's say that you're buying like 25 coins. Well, you don't want to wait an hour for your transaction to go through. So you'll be able to pay a tip to get ahead of the line and have the miners process your transaction quicker, right? So now you have to understand what's the difference between the supply in the past versus the supply now with EIP 1559 if it goes through. So the way that Ether is created right now is that every time the miners are mining a block and, process those transactions, 2 Ether are created. That's the base transaction. And then the miners are collecting all the fees. That's what makes them profitable right now. But right now, there's no cap to Ethereum. Every time they mine, the supply keeps expanding. It's kind of like when the government prints money. Over time, there's more and more being created, so each coin is worth a little bit less. That is one of the issues with Ethereum right now. I mean, since this demand is increasing, the price still goes up. But we can imagine that at some point, like when you keep adding more and more to it, it could potentially be a problem. So that's very different from Bitcoin, which is capped at 21 million. All right, so that's the way that it was before. There was more and more in circulation. But with EIP 1559, what's going to happen is that you're still going to get that 2 Ether created per block that are mined. And the miners are also going to collect that tip, right? But if the fees reach a certain point, because the network is consistently used, largely like above average, then the transaction fees are going to be above what the base rewards are. So then, since they're going to burn them, that's going to remove those from circulation. So let's say that there are 2 Ether created, but there are 3 Ether in fees. Well, you're going to be burning 3, but creating 2. If you calculate that, it means that overall, there's going to be 1 less Ether in circulation in the entire pool of Ethereum coins. Well, that is deflationary, right? And when you lower the supply, each coin is going to be worth more. So that is great for investors and people holding the coins and also people that do the transactions, but it's not as good for the miners who expect that the tips is not going to be nearly as lucrative as the fees that they were collecting right now, since the network is so busy. All right, guys, in the wrap up, I think it's pretty obvious that if the supply starts to slow down or even shrink, it is going to make each coin worth more. And that's why the value is going up right now. People are already buying them, knowing that if this is implemented in July, it is going to be very good for the price of each coin. So currently, there's 113.97 million coins in circulation. If you start to lower how many of them there are, if the fees are consistently higher than the base reward for mining blocks of 2, then you're going to see the pool shrink, and that's going to make the price skyrocket. And that's what I'm counting on, right? But currently, remember, there's a lot of debate around this. There's a lot of pushback from the miners, and we're not ready yet to go to proof of stake. So for now, they need the miners, so there's a big debate. We'll see who wins, but in the meantime, we can expect that this should come into play in July. So right now the Ether is at 1789. So that we talked a lot about the supply in the video, but also don't forget the demand is also there, right? There's more decentralized finance going on. There's more and more apps that are done for Ether. Then you have investors that are buying the coins. And last but not least, don't forget $1.9 trillion in stimulus that's coming soon. Everyone's going to get 1,400 checks. And what can you buy with $1,400? Almost an Ethereum coin. So I do expect that the price is going to keep going up, whether we want it or not. Even I know a lot of viewers are not excited about crypto, but that's the world we live in right now. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. I'm going to keep following it. I got some coins. I'm up right now. We'll see if it drops a little bit and I can buy more. See you guys next video.